Hey everybody, I'm Carla with Race to Walk, and it is time for another episode in Hack the Saga. So, anyway, sorry, I thought I had everything arranged here, and then there's a missing information. So, anyway, what is this? This is a ongoing series of updates about how I, as a Christian content creator, someone who's just teaching Bible studies online, doing book reviews, and teaching Afghan Christians in Pakistan Bible studies, how I got targeted and how I discovered who was behind it. So here's the thing. This one is going to be a little bit different than some of the other ones. Some of the other ones I've just been documenting with some of the stuff that's been going on. This isn't really going to have a lot of documentation. There's going to be a little bit. Sorry, this is bothering me a little bit on the, didn't have quite the right angle. This is going to be a little different because I'm going to be covering some of the things I learned, things that I wish I had done differently when I started publishing on the internet and just writing in general, and some recommendations for you if you are, this is specifically for content creators, but whether you're a writer, a blogger, you publish YouTube videos, publish on social media platforms, whatever it is. If you create something, these are my suggestions to you. Things that I wish I had done differently, and some of the things I do, there are some things that I think I did right from the beginning, but that's what this is going to be about. If you want to go to and see all the updates, this is actually episode number 66 in all of this. I originally started streaming about what was going on back in August of 2024. Can you even believe this? Because I had been reporting to authorities for 5 months. They did nothing, blew me off. So I started live streaming about it. So anyway, if you want to see all the episodes, you can go back to my site, racetowalk.org, Hack the Saga, and I have an overview of all the episodes. That's the episode page. You can go to individual episodes. There's a little blurb that says what that particular episode is about. Starting in, I think, like June, I have some cool episode templates. So the formatting is a little different than the earlier ones. So just FYI. So starting about there, June of 2025, if you go and look, I have summaries of the live stream itself, and just some of the highlights, so you can kind of skim and see what's what and where. So anyway, but in this particular stream, what we're going to be covering is I'm going to revisit a little bit what I talked about last week about the importance of the foundations. What I talked about last week was actually talking about spiritual things like generational curses, sins of association, all that biblical stuff. That can keep us from really getting past boundaries or blockages. And I don't think a lot of people realize that we can come under a curse because of things that other people have done. And in last week's episode, I talked about how that is absolutely biblical, and that is actually the foundation of the atonement. But we won't get into that. You can go watch that live stream if you want to have a little bit more information about it. But I'm going to be talking a little bit about that. Then we're going to be talking about your digital identity and the stakes, and also how. Then we're going to go into how you can protect yourself, how to get started, things to think about as far as organization from the very beginning, and then fourth, we're going to look at how securing your devices. This is just something I'm still learning as I go. Also about securing your content, and then finally about securing your platforms. So that's what we're going to be covering. So last week I did this live stream. If you go on my site, this is the thumbnail for it. If you go on the front page at racewalk.org, it's going to show up as one of the most recent episode. But the title of the stream for the new year was "We Are Bound by We Won't Release," and that part of it is that personally, if we know that there are things that we need to confess and repent of. There are actual, judgments that can come against us if we don't, do that. But also about associations, like our country, our families. It's basically identificational repentance. And what brought this up is I had actually been walking through the State Capitol Plaza on Court Street that very day, and I had seen this before, but I had seen some plaques that are they're tiles in the plaza itself, and so I was going back to take a picture of it because one of them was basically the territorial governor of Oregon. This is before Oregon became a state. Was endorsing everything the Democrat Party had ever done and ever would do. And the thing is, the date on that, I knew that what he was saying, he was endorsing the, at the time, and this is flipped, but at the time, the Republican Party was the party of Abraham Lincoln, and they were abolitionists, and the Democrats were supporting slavery. That's kind of flipped now, but at the time, that's what it was. And so I knew that's what he was saying. But I also saw a plaque about, just a note that there were the, when the wars with the Native Americans began. And so that led to me doing a little more research. And what had really kind of bothered me about that one plaque of, I think it was John Davis, that was a governor, what he said, I was like, is this an endorsement? Because that's what it says at the beginning. It says endorsement. So I'm thinking, are the people that are putting this plaque, in this plaza, are they endorsing that too? Because that was troublesome. But then I was thinking, okay, so this is just reality. This is what happened. This is the attitude and the mindset of some of the founding pioneers of the state. It's just reality. This is what happened. And if it hadn't been in that plaque, I would have never known about it, right? So the fact that it was there is not a bad thing. But the problem is that I don't think that we as a whole have, at least Oregonians, I know I didn't realize that. And I also did not realize the brutality that of the early pioneers of Oregon, of the territory, towards the Indians. And I just, if you are in Oregon, I'm not going to get into more of a history lesson here, but if you aren't in Oregon, and if you're like me and you learned Oregon history and you were taught that the whole exclusion laws were basically just, Oregon not wanting to get into the mess of slavery, because that's what I thought after taking Oregon history. That's not actually the case. And actually, if you go to the Salem Library, they have a whole section on Oregon history, things that you're not going to be able to find online because they aren't digitized, but you can go and just research what really happened. And I think one thing that the plaques in the Capitol Plaza do is it shows you that it's a mixed bag. I mean, there's a lot of, like I said last week, Oregon was basically founded in it was founded in white supremacy and by secret societies. That's who they were. So a lot of occult influence. And, but there's also good things too. So it's what you see there in the plaza about what is noted. It's the good, bad, and the ugly. Some of it's very ugly, but we can't, if we don't know of something, we can't acknowledge that it was wrong. So the first step is just acknowledging that this happened. But as far as it relates to the topic of this dream, what struck me was that it started, well, it wasn't totally, but a lot of it started with these wars were trying to push the Native Americans out from their land, right? So this happened all over the United States. We pushed, especially in Oregon. I mean, when you look at the places that they were from, their ancestral lands, and where they were placed, they were really taken from prime land and put into land that nobody wanted, that was almost impossible to farm. And so it's land theft, right? But also some of the most brutal actions where they had literal extermination orders were in areas where there was gold that was there. And so the thing is, it was really motivated by greed, right? So, geez, I always forget, is this, I swear you guys, did go through every single one of these, and it wasn't like this. So what this tells me is that somebody actually has a login and is just messing with my screen setup. So anyway, that will go a little bit into digital security. But the connection is that the annihilation of Native Americans, because that's what it was, and it really, a lot of it was motivated by greed and lawlessness, right? The reason that Oregon became a state was because there had been 2 years of basically out of control attacks against Native Americans, and so the federal government kind of made them decide, okay, yeah, let's go ahead and take this in as as a state, so that U.S. laws can be in place and this can kind of come into control. But the connection to what we are talking about today is that this is really this is kind of what's going on, not kind of, this is an equivalent to what's going on with really every American. I mean, everybody in the world is dealing with the impact and interaction of tech companies that are, going for broke, all this AI expansion, but also, here, just a second, let me do this. I'm going to turn my camera off and on for a minute, just in case they're messing with the feed. So, okay. There's kind of a delay between my iPad and my laptop, so we'll just see how this goes. But anyway, here's the thing. There's an equivalent sort of situation going on. It's just that there's rather than the pioneers, right, who are, and the white settlers that are going after the resources, is a small handful of tech bros that are basically going after whatever everybody else, not only what they have, but who they are themselves. So anyway, I just want to, when you're talking about being a content creator, I just want to explain to you what is at stake. So this next slide is, I'm going to share the screen of this. I haven't actually read this article. Because I know what's going on, but I wanted to see if anybody had written about it, and somebody literally wrote, I did an exact search for this, the $1.3 trillion house of cards, how the AI bubble became 17 times larger than the .com. So the long and short of it is that the valuation of these tech companies is basically a house of cards, because what this article explains is that they're basically circulating the same money in through just a round of companies. And so there's not really true value being built, but there's all this valuation there. And so he describes it as, at the heart of this unprecedented bubble sits OpenAI, orchestrating what can only be described as financial engineering on a breathtaking scale. The company operates through circular deals, a mechanism where investors pump money into OpenAI, which then immediately uses those same funds to purchase products and services from the very companies that invested in them. Microsoft has injected over $13 billion into OpenAI in exchange for 20% of its revenue. But here's the accounting sleight of hand. When OpenAI pays Microsoft for cloud services using Microsoft's own investment money, Microsoft books it as cloud revenue growth. It's a corporate equivalent of giving somebody $100, receiving that same bill back, and both parties claiming they made $100. So that's just a bunch of financial manipulation that's going on. But what I want you to take away from this, you can go read the article. I'll link to it in the episode article on my website when I post this later. But there's $1.3 trillion at stake. So AI is basically the equivalent of the gold rush that was in the 19th century, back in the 1800s. That's where everybody is putting their money into. AI takes energy, it takes water, and it also takes words, right? This is what it runs on. And I read an article, this is 2 years ago, this is when I first started realizing that, so it would have been 2024. This is when I first started realizing that somebody had built an AI model off of my work. This is back in 2024. They were projecting that AI would have gone through the entire internet by the end of 2025. So we're past that now, right? And what AI requires is they require words, right? And if they take in words that are AI generated, then it starts to go, the model itself starts to become degraded. So if it's constantly feeding in on AI generated work on its own words, then it will start to decline. And if it keeps on doing that, this one research article that I read said that it would cause an irreversible defect and the model itself would go into model collapse. I think I've come across some things on the internet, especially on like Twitter, where I know that there's a bunch of AI run sock puppet accounts. And you can tell that that's a broken model because it's just spewing nonsense. But what should that suggest to you? So the thing is that you have all of this money, $1.3 trillion dependent on something that these tech companies themselves cannot generate. They cannot generate unique content and unique words, right? And what they have built so far, they've built on stolen words. They've built on stolen words. There are lawsuits all over the place about intellectual property theft against these AI companies, and they're losing. I've not read a single one where the AI company has come out in favor of over the actual person that created the content. So, as far if you were investing money, that to me that would say it's probably not a good bet, but there's already a lot of money invested in it, right? So anyway, so what does that say for you for a content creator? Whether you are doing videos off the transcripts, because here's the thing, they stole my transcripts off my videos. Okay, so and then they sabotaged my videos in my account. Whether you're a writer and you're just like I was, like, let's just say you're teaching Bible studies at your church and you're not even publishing online, you're just teaching Bible studies. I guarantee you that if that's the case, you're probably, if you have any computer glitches on your laptop or anything, or any weird stuff is happening, you know what? There's a strong possibility that you're being targeted and your words are being stolen, because that's what happened to me. They literally hacked Bible studies. I started publishing them online, redoing it online in early 2025. So a year ago, I did, I think, three different Bible studies that I had given at my church, right? I'd given that at my church, and I had recorded most of them, and it was on my Bright Sheep Ministries YouTube channel, the one that they stole, hijacked off my account, that I still, to this day, do not have back. It's very obvious it's mine. YouTube did nothing. So they either stole, I think they either, I don't know. I think they either hacked it off my laptop or they stole it off the transcripts of that. Because when I started publishing it again, like redoing the videos on my YouTube channel, these are the last Bible studies you'll see on my Race to Walk channel, and then publishing on my website at Lifeway, all hell broke loose. And they were sabotaging the links going to the individual Bible studies, or sabotaging the featured images. I mean, it was like one thing after another. And the reason is because they had stolen that work. And I don't know if they published their own stuff off of it, but I found multiple influencers and pastors on YouTube that were, I could tell that it was their sermons were plagiarized, and their teachings were plagiarized off of that Bible study. And the reason I knew is because once I redid the Bible study, and I was just, at this point, I'm like, checking my transcripts, and everything. And I was checking the video. I think I went on Tor browser just to see if it would load or if there was any interference. And what YouTube showed me was the first one that was shown. It was a channel that later I could tell that it had a ton of content that was plagiarized from mine. But YouTube matched the transcripts. It recognized that what I was saying and what this other person was saying were really similar. And it kept bringing up all these other ones that basically were, structured the same. It was on the parable of the prodigal son. So anyway, what I'm saying is, if you create anything, okay, if you create anything, you are at risk. Okay, and when you think about, I've been seeing things online about, Google changing their Gmail settings so that they can crawl your emails, or Microsoft forcing the use of their like Word or anything into Copilot, pulling all your content, all your creation, all your words into their AI model. What do you think the purpose of that is? The reason they're doing it is because they need content, and it's basically like this parasite. They have to siphon it out of you because they don't have enough to keep themselves going. That's what's going on. So if you create anything at all, you're at risk. Even just you as a person. Okay, you as a person that you have relationships and, with other people, and you have a life. I mean, I'll show you this, but there's like this massive industry about basically stealing the identity, the personal identifiers for other people, and creating these sock puppet accounts and using AI generation to just do this massive sock puppet accounts so they can drown out real people. Anyway, so that's the point. Okay, so this is why that's important for you. I don't care who you are. You need to be on guard. So this is the next one. We're going to go to the beginning of organization. And this is something I think, I don't know, at the very beginning, see, here's the thing. I have writing from like before I started doing anything, like, back in 2000, I have some things written. I don't even know where those things are. There were some things, these stories that I wanted to finish. I don't even know where it is now. And one was pretty specific. It had like, I don't know if I could recreate that one. I mean, most other things I've written, I think I could go back and at least start rewriting something similar. This one, I don't know if I could. I don't know what happened to that particular file. But when I started my business, Legacy Marketing Services, I had basic organization. I had, my folders for client sites. I was good at categorizing for, um, you know, just different types of things. But when I started to get into real content heavy work for clients, that I started, it took me a little bit to get a consistent structure, because here's the thing. Consistency is key, because if you change your organization, that's not organization, right? So whatever you do, you want to have a file structure that is consistent, that you maintain over time. Okay? And have a consistent naming of your files. So for example, if this is just however you're going to do it, whether it's like you're writing social media content, like do it like, I don't know, however you do it, but have like in the beginning SM, and then have the structure. So just for example, when I was creating the manuscripts for an unexpected journal and uploading them, which was the apologetics journal that I was part of starting back in 2018, I was involved with it for 6 years. But anyway, I would start it with AUJ, and then volume number, issue number, and then an underscore, and then the theme of the issue. And I would do that for all of them. When I was doing the covers, I would have the volume, the issue, and then like the format, because like Amazon and Ingram are a little bit different. So I would have like AMZ paperback or PB for paperback. So whatever you're creating, make sure that it's consistent, and that you maintain that consistency. So I've worked with people before that they will have one particular system, and then somebody else comes in, or they get advice from somebody else, and then they change it. So if you're going to do that, then you need to change it all, because again, if everything's not organized in the same way, then there's no consistency. I mean, you're really not organized if that's the case. Okay, so the other thing is, let me go here. Okay, so what this is, this I started, I'm trying to remember when I actually started using this. This is what I have as a, is this one? This might actually, so this is the one I have for Race to Walk. It's a content strategy workbook, and basically, just to be honest with you, especially in the last couple of years when I've been literally hacked on a daily basis, I haven't been really going through and using the tabs for statistics, but this is one of the things that I would do differently now. I would pay more attention to the statistics and what was going on, because if I had, I would have noticed the hacking a lot sooner. But what I have used this for very consistently is, let me see if this is, what's going on? Why can't I get to this? Okay. Here's the thing. I would show this to you. Here it is. Okay. So this is, I basically used it kind of as a library for everything I've ever written in on Race to Walk. And I've done this I actually started this for my legacy marketing site, I think maybe a year or two before that. And so this particular one is annual, and I just create a new one each year, and then just copy the tabs over for the actual content. But this is showing all the posts that I've written. These little, this little red to the side just means that I've created article images about that. So anyway, so this is a record of everything that I have there. Now, the other thing that I've done is I did this on my videos too. And I was just going through this and going back and checking some things. But one of the things I found was, so I have them color coded by date. So every video that I've created, I have the date it was created. The numbers here on this are when I was doing the podcast for the Bible study. That's the number of it, the category, and the link to it. But what I found was when I was going through this just the other day, and because I'm going to be splitting out some of the content on my channels, I discovered that, let's see, okay, so here, back in 2021, I first started doing shorts on my YouTube channel. And the first one I did was one on my Bible study, Job 4-5, and this one was titled Deception versus Discernment. So I'm just going through, and I was comparing it between the shorts that were on my channel and what I have recorded, because I wanted to make sure I hadn't misrecorded anything. And what I discovered was that 3 out of the, let's see, how many, 1, 2, 3, 5 that I published in 2021, they've been deleted. So when the people were the friends that were sabotaging me, I don't know at what point this was, but anyway, yeah, those are gone. But I would have never known that if I hadn't had a record of what was there, right? And the other thing that I've done is me personally, on my, I don't know why this is not responding. Okay, I'm just gonna explain this if it's not flipping over. It may be because it's a Google Sheet. I don't know. But I also have one for all the images I've created, because what's one of the things I started early was I was doing just basically verses of, images with verses on it. So I have a spreadsheet of the reference, the verse itself, and do I have the file name? I'm not sure if I have that, but I also have a column for if it's included in a post or something. And that, I think, is, even if you're not like somebody that is posting Bible verses, if you have quotes or any sort of imagery that you are creating to promote your website or your business or whatever, have a record of it, because at some point you get so much content and so many things created that you forget what you've done. I mean, as I was just going through and transferring things over for 2026, I was like, oh yeah, I made that. I totally forgot. And it was interesting going back and looking at the early images that I created. The person that inspired me, the creator that inspired me to do that, was somebody that used to post on Facebook and then later Instagram, Janice Sweet to the Soul. And if you look at her early stuff and my early images I created, you can see that I was taking inspiration from her. So this is the thing. She has a lot better sense of typography than I do. She's better at picking fonts. I mean, I can pick fonts, but it's just sometimes it's painful. So I kind of developed my own style, and I don't do what she did anymore. She's really good at it's really kind of you have to have an artistic sense to be able to combine a lot of really strong fonts, and I can't really say that I have that. So anyway, my style diverged from hers, but if you look at her early stuff and the early things I did, you can see that inspiration. But anyway, this is one of the good things that I did, because I do know everything that I've created. Now, if you are part of a business that has, a content team on staff and graphic designers on staff, and there are services out there to help you manage, they're called digital asset management companies. That's an option. If you are somebody that's just starting out and you are just getting going, you may or may not want to do that. I don't know. But this is the thing. I do think that it's good to have something basic, like like this to also record it on, because if you switch services, or if the service changes or whatever, and that's all you have, usually those kinds of I don't know. I've seen some of them. I was researching some of those services, and some of them will transfer over. But here's the thing: you're depending on somebody else to keep your documentation. So having it, I don't think it's a bad thing to have it in two places. Have it someplace simple where you know what you have, and then if you do go with a service like that, um, there's a lot of them out there for large companies. I was looking for, like, individual creators. There's not as much selection on that, but anyway, that is another option. But as far as content itself, like I said, just having a simple file structure and consistent file structure is important. But the other thing that helped me personally, it was when, where am I going? Was when I skipped over to, or started using Scrivener app, which is basically a program, and it's for writing. So here's the thing: I had heard about it. This is what it looks like inside. There's different views. I had heard about it, I think maybe when I started blogging, or not too long. I mean, I had been writing before, but blogging on Race to Walk when I started in 2013. But I was thinking, that seems like, why do I have Word? Why do I need a program like that? And it had all these features, and it just seemed like overkill. I mean, I was like, even when I started using it, it seemed a little complex. So what I did, the reason I switched to it was because I started the graduate program in fall of 2015, and I was in two classes where I was using some of the same references and essays, and so I'd have to go back and dig out the Word doc that had that in there, and I was just going back and forth. And so finally I thought, okay, now I'm going to go to use this. I cannot even remember if there was somebody that was showing how to use it or what, but I got the program, and I have, since I first bought the program in 2015, every single thing I've ever written since then, there have been a few exceptions, but not very many, has gone into one Scrivener project or another. So everything that I have for my Race to Walk, on my site, my newsletters, my video descriptions, everything is all in one Scrivener project. I just have folders like posts, and the subfolder by year and month, and then the posts that I wrote. And let me tell you, with the amount of sabotage that has been against my accounts or my site, that is one of the things that's allowed me to basically, restore things a lot of times. And here's the thing: they hacked my website, because these are the friends. I told them about how I use this, so they know what I use. I mean, it's like they live on my laptop, so they know where to go when they want to steal content, and they know what to do to sabotage it. But I mean, that's kind of a security issue. It's not an issue of the program itself, but having this has helped me not only keep everything organized, but also restore things when they've gone behind me and destroyed it. It has a backup, a built-in backup for, you can back up to your, you can select a backup location. So if you wanted to, it has a built-in backup with Dropbox, so you can do backup. So I have on my sites or my projects, I have set so that it will automatically save a backup every time I exit. So, if I'm using it a lot, there may be, one almost every day or whatever. But that has been a really helpful feature. So I think we're going to move on now to securing your content, because this ties in, right? So here's the thing: backups on your laptop are good, but keep in mind the desperation of, you may look at what I've been going through and say that's really extreme. If if there's somebody that targets you as somebody that you want your content that they're going to build a model off of, I would not, don't think that that you won't be hacked to get what you wrote. Don't. Especially if you are a careful researcher, if you document, if you cite your sources, you're at risk, let me tell you. So anyway, what I would do is back it up have backups on your laptop. I would also back it up at on a hard drive that's not an external drive, right? That you can just take and have somewhere, maybe even 2 of them, and then also have it in cloud storage. So you have it at least maybe 4 times at least. If you are somebody that's good at cybersecurity and you have some other suggestions, please let me know in the comments. And actually, I'm going to turn like regular comments on for the episode article. So if you do comment, might be better to comment on my site rather than wherever you're watching the video, because those get sabotaged. So anyway, the other thing that I would do differently is if you are writing a blog. This is the thing. It's like we think that if we're not getting paid or if it's not a formal, oh shoot, we're not going. Did I ever go past that? No. Maybe I went out of order. If you think if it's not a formal published book that it doesn't have value, right? And that's just not the case. If your work has value the moment that you are completing it, it doesn't suddenly have new value because you're selling it. The sale is just an acknowledgement of the value that's already there, right? So even like if you have something that is not normally under traditional copyright that everybody knows and acknowledges, which mainly is books, like published books, this is what I would do. And I would not only do it, I would do this is my recommendation if you blog, and also if you publish videos, because like I said, my transcripts have been stolen and plagiarized. Not only have they been stolen and plagiarized, but they have gone behind me and sabotaged my transcripts repeatedly. So anyway, this is what I would do. I would, this actually occurred to me early when I started blogging, and I didn't do it. But I was thinking about copywriting my my blog post, but I hadn't heard of anybody doing it, and so I didn't. And if I had done that at the time, that would have saved me a lot of heartache. So, or at least I think it would have been harder for them to steal my stuff. So this is what I would do. Doing this again, this is what I would do. I would take your posts, like do this, if you're a very prolific writer, I don't know, it just depends on how much you post, but I would take your posts, just compile them into a Word doc, right? And then you can do this at more than one place, but this is one place that I know that makes it straightforward and easy. You can go to press.barnesandnoble.com, and this is a direct-to-print publishing arm of Barnes & Noble. You can do it on Amazon too. Also, Ingram Spark, you can do this, but the thing about Barnes & Noble is that it makes it really straightforward to just saying, do you want to print yourself? Do you just want to keep it yourself, right? Print for you. It makes it very, very clear. So just go to Barnes & Noble Press, and here's the thing. I know that Amazon.com has like an automatic cover creator. Like if you don't want to, if that's just stressing you out, you can just like enter the information and it will create a cover for you. I can't remember if Barnes & Noble Press does, but regardless, even if it doesn't, you can go to Canva and create like a simple graphic to use as a cover, because you're not planning on selling this, you're planning on documenting your work, right? So just put it all in a Word doc. I would also include the URL of the post, the date it published, and then the text. Just put it in there when you get like, 40,000 words, 60,000 words, or whatever. Just, do it on a schedule, like either every 6 months, if you don't post a lot, maybe once a year, or whatever, and just sign in and create a book, upload that manuscript, and put a title like my blog 2026, and just upload it and print a copy, and buy your own copy and have it sent to you. You can also send that to copyright it at the U.S. Copyright Office. I don't know, it used to be $35 for an individual to do it. I don't know if that's still the case. They might have changed their prices. But anyway, then you have a definite copyright on your work, right? If you're sending it into the Copyright Office, you have a definite copyright on your work, and you also know specifically, this is what I printed, this is as I published it. Because another thing that they've done is they've gone back and changed some of the content on my site. So you will know that this is what you have, right? That is my recommendation. And again, if you have a YouTube channel and you publish YouTube videos, especially if it's, if you're just babbling and not saying anything, maybe not worry about it. But if you have things that have valuable information and that everybody's copying you, or it's in an area where, people who know what they're talking about are rare. I mean, I don't consider that about, the Bible. I think there's a lot of people who do know about the Bible. It's just that there's a lot of people that want to profit from it that don't. So anyway, but if you have YouTube videos, I would do the same thing. You can go on I can't do this on my Race to Walk channel because it's been completely like jacked and sabotaged. But if you just have a regular channel, you can go to under subtitles, right? And then you can click on, if you haven't done this, originally when I started seeing growth in my YouTube channel was when I started editing and correcting the words in my transcripts so that it was, they were reading correctly. That made a difference. But you can export it as different timestamp files, right? So you can do, it's like VTT, SRT, and SBV. This is what I would do. This is what I do now. I started in 2020 editing and correcting all my transcripts. Never downloaded them. Didn't think I'd need to. I can't even tell you. Like, I won't even get into it. If you correct the transcripts, this is what you do. This is what I do now. I correct it, and I select everything as I'm able to get to it, because my stuff is still being targeted. So I select and copy everything as it is when I can access it, so I can tell the things that are being specifically sabotaged. I save that as a text file. And I save it in, I have a folder for the video itself, right, for that particular video that I'm doing. And then I have a subfolder for the captions. So I download it there, and then I correct the transcripts. And then after I correct it, I select it all, save it as a text file, as corrected transcripts for that one. And those are published. And then once those are published, you just click by the subtitle, you click download, and then the format that you want. I download all 3 copies now, and I save that in the same captions folder. And then those are things that I've been uploading to an encrypted drive on Proton because of how much I've been attacked. So anyway, for documenting your work, I would do the same thing. I would take just take a Word doc, and I would do two things. I would paste the one of the timestamp files in there, so that's there. But also, you can take that text file and just go to, like, I don't know. I mean, I use Claude AI, but you can just enter a prompt. Let's say, please format this transcript for, I don't know, basically like clean it up, format it into a regular something that would be readable, right, into paragraphs and grammar, because it does not come through on your caption files, and then they'll just spit it out, and that would be something that would be readable, right? So post that formatted transcript into your Word doc, post the timestamp in there, and I would put the publish date, the length of the video, and then also the URL to it. And then as you get enough, do the same thing. Just publish it as a book. You have a copy, and I would copyright it. I would just send it to the copyright office. And this is my work. This is what I've done. So you have a record that this is your work. This is what you said, right? Because anything digital can be hacked, and so anyway, but those things are important because when here's the thing, it's like the amount of number of times that they've gone behind me and sabotaged things. If I had done this to these posts way back when, if I had hard copies or had a computer that wasn't hacked, that they couldn't get into, and changing and altering my data, because that's what they're doing. They're going in and they're going behind you and changing and altering things. So here's the thing. I just realized that I've been already talking for an hour, and I haven't gotten to really about your devices or your platforms. And I do want to cover that a little bit more. So I think I'm going to make this part one of defense against the dark digital arts, and I hope that I've explained the reason that you should be taking this seriously. So if you have suggestions about what I've covered so far about organizing your content, I'd really like to hear about how other people do it. I was at the Kaiser Times for a little bit, and I also did some work for the Humble Observer in Kingwood, or in Humble. But it's like, how do you organize your content? How do you keep track of what's there? These are newspapers, and I never really got an answer to that. But I mean, if other people who are like big, who are consistent, prolific creators, I'd like to know how you keep track of it and how you organize your stuff. So anyway, I think that's what I'm going to stop at today. And I do have the next one, I do have a live stream that I do. I do have some examples of how some of these things have been sabotaged. So we'll talk a little bit more about, how these things are happening. I mean, when I say this, I can tell you what's happened to me because I've been documenting. Obviously, go to my website at racetowalk.org, hack the Saga. You can see I have been documenting a lot. I have literally thousands and thousands of images, screenshots of this stuff that's been happening. So I can see what's happening. Do I know specifically how they're doing it? No, but we'll talk a little bit more in the next update about that, about like people around you and how they may be sabotaging you. But anyway, if you want to have a notice of when I'm going to be sending them out, I have been pretty good about this. I have been sending out an email update ahead of the live stream. And if you go to resources.racetowalk.org, you can sign up there, and you can also see the past updates that I've done. Here's the thing. If you sign up for it, you have to make sure you click through on the confirmation. Otherwise, you're not going to be signed up. There's not anything I can do about it. I can't activate you without you confirming that. So again, go to resources.racewalk.org, sign up for the email, and you can subscribe to this wherever you're watching it. If you're like on somewhere other than YouTube, yeah, go ahead and subscribe and you'll get updates. This YouTube channel that I'm streaming to right now is completely screwed, and I'm planning on moving these updates over to their own channel, and one that I can actually have real caption files without having a messed up interface. But it's all work in progress. So anyway, that's that. So again, if you are creating things and you have your unique thoughts, your unique words, that has value. And it is something that these ravenous tech companies are trying to take from you with no compensation. We might talk a little bit more about that in the next time too. But anyway, that's enough for today. And anyway, thanks for watching, and I will talk to you later.